Hi everybody and welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Taylor. I'm a current master's student at Harvard who is planning to apply to medical school this upcoming cycle. So if you are also planning to apply this cycle or in the future, etc., and you're interested in hearing about sort of the timeline and the process and how I'm strategizing my timeline for applying to med school, then this is the video for you. So I have a lot of content on my channel about applying to grad school and how to apply, how to get in, what you should do to make your application the very best. And all of that is retrospective advice because by the time that I had started my channel, I had already applied and I had already gotten into my MPH programs. So this time with medical school, for better or for worse, I am going to try to document the application process as much as I can for you all, just to make sure that if you're also going to be going through this process, that you can learn a little bit more about what it's like. It's a very big, daunting task, and I think that the more information you have, the better. So hopefully my journey will help some of you all, and I want to talk about how I'm strategizing the next few months to get through this application cycle. So it is currently mid-February, and I am planning to hit submit on my application on June 1st. So all the things that have to happen in between that, let's just run down that list of all of the necessary components of your application. So number one, obviously, is you have your transcripts and your GPA, all of that kind of like grade information. Then you have your MCAT score, and then the holistic part of the application, which is like your personal statement, your letters of recommendation, and descriptions of your experiences. There are some other little pieces of your application, but those are sort of the main buckets, and they all need to be prepped. So based on my experience with other applications and just knowledge that I've acquired over the many years that I've been a pre-med student, I am strategizing and planning my application process this way. So I am going to, by the end of February, so by the end of this month, I'm going to ask for all of my letters of recommendation. I'm doing this first because that's one of the things that I think takes kind of the longest to happen depending on your letter writers, but it's also the thing that is most out of your control timeline wise. You can obviously, request that letters are done by a certain time and tell your letter writers your deadlines, etc., but it is in the end of the day in their hands. And so I want to make sure that that is done as soon as possible, so that if there's any hiccups in that, whether there are, professors who don't end up getting back to me or things like that, and I need to sort of adjust as I go, I will have plenty of time and space to do that. That is also around the time that the letters packet application opens for my undergraduate school. So even if you have done like gap years or master's programs or things like that, you still typically go through your undergraduate institution to organize your entire letters, whether that's a committee letter or a letters packet or something like that. My undergrad was huge, so they don't have the resources to do a committee letter for every student applying to med school. So instead they do what's called a letters packet. And so basically they just compile all of the letters for you, and they have an entire system for that. And so that is when they start doing that system. That's when they start receiving letters and receiving your requests for packets, all of that kind of stuff. So definitely make sure that you're aware of all of the different timelines for your undergraduate institution for different help with that kind of thing, as well as that you're aware of the faculty members' schedules that you're asking for letters, and that you're aware obviously of the application deadlines for the schools that you want to apply to. So like I said, I'm going to, by the end of this month, get all of those letters. So that's task number 1. And there is a little bit of a pre-task before that. So I have a packet that I send to my letter writers when I'm requesting a letter, and I have an entire video on asking for letters of recommendation, and it's under my How to Get into Grad School series, but it is applicable for any type of letter of recommendation. So definitely go check those out. I'm pretty sure there's free templates for you guys to download and all that kind of stuff. So part of what I include when I'm asking for a letter of recommendation is I include my personal statement, or at least a draft of it. And so I don't plan to have my final personal statement done by 2 weeks from now, just because it is a huge part of your application and you want to make sure that it is as well written and amazing as possible. But I do want to have a draft at least written for them by the time that I ask my letter writers, just so that they can fully understand why I want to go to medical school, and they can reflect that in whatever way possible in their letter of support for me. So that's kind of the pre-task for the homework, if you will, before asking for letters of recommendation, but that is my number 1 step. And so after those are requested and it's out of my hands and I'm just have to wait on them to be done writing the letters, then the next thing that I'm going to move on to is finalizing that personal statement. So I'm hoping to sort of just be slowly working on it and getting edits and getting feedback from different people in my life throughout the next couple of months. Probably, March, April, maybe even May, but I'm hoping to have something final by then. And so that is step number 2 for me, is finalizing my personal statement. And then we have step number 3, which for me, this is the worst, most anxiety-inducing, most stressful part, and that is taking the MCAT. So for many of you, you will have already maybe taken the MCAT the fall semester before you were applying, but that wasn't in the cards for me. One, we're in the middle of a pandemic, and 2, there was just a lot of things going on. I was moving, starting a new program, things like that. So I wanted to make sure that I was in the correct headspace to dedicate enough time and energy to studying for my MCAT exam, which is scheduled for late April, which in my opinion is the end of the gold zone of MCAT taking time. You can definitely take it up through until August-ish, maybe even September, but to have your scores back by the time that you hit submit, the first day that you're allowed to hit submit, that last test date will be the end of April, because it takes you approximately a month to get your scores back from the day that you take your test. So definitely keep that in mind. However, if it doesn't happen, if you have to take it a little bit later, you can still submit your application without having an MCAT score in it. So definitely keep that in mind. The application committee just typically won't review your application until they have your MCAT scores in, but you can still hit submit. So I am aiming, like I said, schedule my MCAT for late April. So that is the other thing that is going to be simultaneously happening while my letters are being requested and my personal statement is being written. While all that's happening, I'm also going to be studying for my MCAT, which is coming up in late April. Once I finish that and that's all out of the way, we'll be into May, and typically the AAMC will open the AMCAS for you to go in and sort of start filling out information. Again, you can't press submit typically until around June 1st, but you can still open the application, enter everything, see what it's like, see what the questions are, things like that. So during that month is when I'm going to be writing up my experiences. And so you have 15 slots for the different extracurricular activities or experiences that you've had and why you think that they're meaningful and are going to make you a great doctor. So you have a limited amount of space to write about those. And so that's what I'm going to be working on throughout that period of time, that May to June time, so that I am, 1, distracted while I wait for my MCAT scores to come back anxiously, but 2, so that everything is as complete as possible by the time that I hit submit on June 1st. And so the other thing that can also be going on simultaneously in May is the request of your transcripts. So any school that you've attended, community college, university, master's program, post-bac, anything like that, you have to request all of those transcripts. And I recommend that you request obviously the official version from the school that goes to the AMC, and that you also request a second official version that gets sent to you so that you can see exactly what it's going to look like and exactly what the admissions committee is going to see, because AMCAS also has you re-enter each individual class with each individual grade, and they recalculate a GPA of their own for you. So keep that in mind. That's definitely another time-consuming part, and you should definitely check out all of the different time frames for transcript submissions. Some schools might take a couple of weeks to send them out, but typically they'll have an expected amount, like time frame. So check that out and make sure that you're aware of that so that all of that is in and ready by June 1st. I know there's a lot of balls up in the air. There's a lot of different things going on. And so I hope this hasn't been too confusing to explain, but pretty much having everything ready by June 1st and triaging which things are going to take the longest, which things are out of your control, etc., etc., etc. And so then once you can finally hit that submit button on June 1st, after that, my planned timeline is to begin writing, because it never ends, begin writing some basically templates for secondary questions. So you can look online for common secondary application questions. Most schools, I think nowadays, will just automatically end up sending you a secondary, and there's typically a time frame that you have to turn that around back to them of a couple of weeks. So you don't have very long to write what is often quite long and potentially quite a few different essay responses back to that school about why you specifically want to go to that school. So there, like I said, there's tons of like common questions out there that you can look up, and so that's what I'm planning to do. And then I'll basically write some templates that can be adjusted and tweaked per school, kind of like a cover letter for applying to jobs. And that is pretty much it, because past then, once you submit your secondaries back, it is again out of your hands and in the hands of the admissions committees, who will hopefully love you and call you for an interview and let you into their med school. So the only other thing that I will mention about this process is that somewhere in there you should be strategizing which schools you're applying to. That's a whole nother ball game, and I can make a video on that if you all would like. And I can also just be making more videos about my entire application process to med school if that's something that you all want to see. So if you do, let me know by liking and commenting on this video, and don't forget to subscribe so that you don't miss anything. And I will see you all next week.